It's Brainwash with Dr. Tom and Guitar Picks with Eric Perrotti. Bjork, Like Someone in Love.
Yeah, that's an old standard by J. Van Heusen that Bjork has, and I wish that it's a great melody. I wish that I could play it for you. I actually knew the changes at one time, but the accompaniment on the recording that I have here is, I think, the sounds of the ocean and a harp, and it is the most subtle thing. And when I bought that album by Bjork, I didn't know too much what to expect, aside from it sounding a bit like perhaps the Sugar Cubes. And it did, sort of. It was a little more club mix, you might say. Mm-hmm. Especially Human Nature, which was sort of the release from that album. And then this piece, I think it's the 6th song on there. I'm listening to it, and it comes on, and I mean, I must have played it 5 or 6 times in a row. And I think it just got worse and worse. The tears built up even more every time I would listen to it. And perhaps they still do. There's just something plaintive about this lady that has this little girl quality in the way that she phrases music that makes me want to do the same thing when I play guitar. But it also made me want to figure out that song and learn the changes. And I didn't know it was an old song. I didn't realize. And actually, after hearing it a couple of times, I started to recognize this is a song I've heard before. I wasn't very familiar with it. But you can find recordings. I think it probably goes back to the 1940s or so. Mm-hmm. The song itself, her recording probably goes back 4 or 5 years. I forget exactly when that CD came out. But anyway.
So if Chuck Berry may have been the earliest influence that you recall, which on this list would be the most recent?
Probably the Sheila Chandra. Even though I've almost always been, this love affair with Eastern and especially Indian music. I would say because she presented it in a different way. And then perhaps the Bjork, even though I've been listening to her for 15 years or so. But the later stuff in particular, that I've gotten to know who she is as a composer and musician, I would say those would be probably the later, which neither one of them are guitar. Isn't that interesting? Mm-hmm. So if I was going to say guitar-wise, though, I could say somebody like probably the Roy Smeck, but he goes back further than any of these people. But now a lot of these guys I've been listening to since at least the 80s, some back to the 70s. But Roy Smeck, probably less than 10 years ago. I'd known the name for a while, but I finally sought out who this guy was, this wizard of the strings. So as guitar, he probably would be the more recent, but that even goes back a ways. What does that tell you about contemporary music? No, I don't know. I think guys like John Mayer are great. He plays very, very well. I'm just using him as an example of somebody who is known to play guitar. And interesting, we were talking about the girl from Ipanema, the major 9th chord. If you play that chord and add the bass and bottom string, you get the... that's the John Mayer song. What was that one, Yeah. I don't feel influence from people like that, though. I just don't. I'm sure that I might, but I just don't. I don't feel there's enough uniqueness there that says anything to me. And I'm not saying they're not unique, and who am I to judge? I mean, especially me just sitting in this little room tonight, all right?